Hi friends, so we're skipping ahead again, and I brought a chart that I make for the confirmands to kind of see if I can help. And maybe I'll have Kristen post this online for us. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. Let me back up here. To help you, where do I need to hold it? There we go. To help you kind of stay on top of this family tree that we're working with. So you can see at the top, you've got Abraham and Sarah, and Abraham and Hagar, Sarah's slave girl. Um, Together have Ishmael, but he's not the chosen one, even though he's the firstborn. Remember, God's promise was to Abraham and Sarah, and they have Isaac, and then Isaac marries Rebecca. And remember, God chooses Jacob rather than Esau. We've been through that quite a bit lately. And then here in the middle, you see Jacob, whose name is changed to Israel, and you see his wives, okay, Leah and Rachel. I put the hearts there to remind us that Rachel is the one that he really loved. And so that made Joseph and Benjamin all the more special to him. And then you'll see over here, Judah also has like a cross next to it. That is to signify that Jesus comes from that line. So Jesus comes from the tribe of Judah. And then Dinah is there in parentheses. She has a tragic story. She is the only daughter of Jacob that's named. And if you want to go back and read about what happens to her, it's a terrible story. That is in chapter 34 of Genesis. But okay, so we are focusing on Joseph today. Joseph is the oldest of Rachel's sons, and you should know that in this time that we're skipping here, to skip ahead to Genesis 37, Rachel died in childbirth, giving birth to Benjamin. Okay, so Jacob is widowed from his favorite wife, and that makes him perhaps a little more protective of Joseph and Benjamin. Okay. All right, so this story probably will be familiar to you, but let's read it and see what it might have for us. All right, we're going to start in Genesis chapter 37, verse 1. Jacob settled in the land where his father had lived as an alien, the land of Canaan. This is the story of the family of Jacob. I think that's kind of a strange line because we've been reading about Jacob for many chapters now, his family anyway. But here we go. Joseph, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. He was a helper to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his children. Okay, time out. Notice here that we're seeing the name Jacob and Israel used interchangeably. Most of the time, he'll continue to be called Jacob. Israel won't really catch on until we're talking about the people of Israel. But again, if you can keep in mind that Israel and Jacob are the same person, it will help you. I think it's kind of a aha moment for understanding who the people of Israel come from. Okay. Verse 3, now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he had made him a long robe with sleeves. Okay, you'll see here there's a textual note. Meaning of the Hebrew uncertain. The traditional rendering, which comes from, okay, so the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, then it was translated into Greek, and if you go from the Hebrew to the Greek to the English, it gets to a coat of many colors. But if you go back to the Hebrew directly, which would make for a better translation, right? Translating from one language to another is not going to be nearly as accurate as translating from the original language to the language that you're translating to. Hope you followed that. At any rate, when you go back to the original Hebrew, it's uncertain. It probably means literally a robe with the palms of the hands or the soles of the feet. So, does that mean a long robe? I don't know. Obviously, if you're into musicals, it's a coat of many colors. But at any rate, it's some sort of robe that is very special and somehow marks Joseph as being favored. Okay, verse 4. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Once Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, listen to this dream that I dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright. Then your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers said to him, are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to have dominion over us? So they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words. He had another dream and told it to his brothers, saying, "Look, I have had another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What kind of dream is this that you have had? Shall we indeed come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow to the ground before you?" So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Okay, so Joseph is not winning any friends by sharing his dreams, but Joseph's ability to have dreams and interpret them and interpret other people's dreams is really remarkable, and it will come up many times in the rest of this story. So this kind of raises the question of like, okay, they really didn't like the message. They really did not like the message of these dreams, but he did have the dreams, and in fact, as we keep reading, they will kind of come to pass that way. Eventually, his brothers will bow down to him. So Joseph is hard to take because you can imagine as a 17-year-old boy, he has probably given his brothers fits and he is reveling in his favored status. But at the same time, God chooses who God chooses to do what God would have them do. And sometimes the truth really hurts, right? Anyway, more to think about. Let's keep going. Verse 12. This is not going to turn out well for Joseph, at least in the meantime. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." He answered, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring word back to me." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron. He came to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock." The man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from a distance, and before he came near to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we shall say that a wild animal has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he delivered him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but lay no hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the long robe with sleeves that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Okay, so they're ready to kill him, or at least some of them are ready to kill him. And Reuben steps in and is like, "Oh, no, let's not kill him. Just throw him in a pit." And Reuben kind of has in mind, okay, I'm going to go rescue him later, and I'm going to, bring him back to my dad. And then you wonder what his motivation is too. Like, is he going to be the hero? And if he is, then how are the brothers going to feel about him? So many questions. Okay, verse 25. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, carrying gum, balm, and resin on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Okay, so stop there for a minute. We'll see that there are still connections being made in this family. The Ishmaelites come from Ishmael here, right? Okay, so just pointing that out there. Okay. Verse 26. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." Noble Judah, right? He steps in and is like, "Hey, we can't kill our brother, but we can sell him into slavery and make a buck," right? Okay, and his brothers agreed. When some Midianite traders passed by, they drew Joseph up, lifting him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. Okay, so we get a little confused here between the the Ishmaelites and the Midianites, and that again is one of those source issues, but it's not the sources we've talked about, and I don't want to keep you here forever, so I won't go down that road. So I won't really show that to you, but that's just another kind of source issue. Is one source said it was the Ishmaelites, one source said it was the Midianites. And when they were put together, nobody felt the need to kind of smooth that over and make a decision. So they're both included there. Verse 29. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. He returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where can I turn?" Then they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They had the long robe with sleeves taken to their father, and they said, "This we have found. See now whether it is your son's robe or not." How callous is that? They've done this terrible thing to their brother. They've thrown him in a pit. They've sold him to slavery. They're going to allow their dad to believe that he has been killed. And they're just like, "Oh, see if this is your son's robe or not." Not even saying "my brother." See if this is your son's robe. These boys. Okay, verse 33. He recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters, so we noted that the only named daughter is Dinah, but he obviously had more daughters as well. All his sons and all his daughters sought to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." Okay, so Sheol is the place that they understood people to go after they died. It wasn't exactly hell, it was just where you went. But it was understood to be down, like go down to Sheol to sleep with your ancestors. And he's saying that even when he goes down to Sheol to his son, he will still be mourning. So basically he's saying, for the rest of my life, I am going to grieve this loss, which I'm sure anyone who loses a child grieves that for the rest of their lives. I think that's probably pretty normal for parents. Thus his father bewailed him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. Okay, I love this whole story of Joseph, and I love that there's just that little tune in next time. Meanwhile, this other thing is happening in Egypt, and it's going to turn out to be really, really important. Okay, and we are going to see as we continue to read this story how God creates provision in the midst of really terrible circumstances. This is a horribly broken family, right? If brothers are selling a brother into slavery and allowing their dad to believe that he's dead, if their jealousy has pushed them to that, this is a messed up situation. And even in the midst of that, God is going to provide for their family down the road and do something amazing. Okay, so we are going to leave it there for today. We're going to pick it up tomorrow in chapter 41. But if you would like to spend some time reading about what happens with Potiphar and Potiphar's wife and how Joseph goes to jail, I wish there was time to deal with all of it. But if you have a little extra time, go ahead and read Genesis 39 and Genesis 40 before tomorrow's video. And it'll help make the whole Joseph story a little more meaningful. Let's have a quick word of prayer. Dear God, you are the one who brings beauty out of ashes, who makes a way forward when it seems there is no way. We thank you for the story of Joseph and the ways that you move, even in the midst of human wickedness, to do amazing things. We pray you give us eyes to see where you are moving in our world in the same way today. And we give you thanks for all these things and pray them in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen. Thanks, everybody.